Welcome to the Golf Improvement Podcast, episode 91.
Welcome to the podcast for golf lovers and enthusiasts who are looking to take their games to new heights. Dedicated to custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice to improve your golf game. This is the Golf Improvement Podcast with your host, Tony Wright.
Hello, this is Tony Wright from Game Improvement Golf in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, with the Golf Improvement Podcast, dedicated to sharing useful information on custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice techniques. Bringing you the custom club fitting experience of your life and lower scores always. Well, it's good to be back. I hope some of you missed me. And I am really excited this week that in addition to this interview that you're about to hear, I'm recording 2 additional new podcast interviews. But on to today's interview. We're back today with Bruce Rearick from Burnt Edges Consulting, sharing lessons that he's learned about putter design that will help you to putt your best. Enjoy this interview. Hello, this is Tony Wright with the Golf Improvement Podcast, and my guest today is a return guest, Bruce Rearick from Burnt Edges Consulting, and I love what you say on your site, professional advice on all aspects of rolling the ball into a hole. Well, about a month ago, Bruce did a great interview with me on putter fitting, and it's already the second most downloaded interview of the 90 that I've done, and when I mentioned that to him, he said, hey, let's do one on putter design. So this seemed like a great time to do it. So Bruce, welcome again. And we're going to really dive into it today and really interested in some of the things that you said you're going to talk about and also some of the things I know you're going to say. So hello.
Hi, Tony. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great. Well, so let's sort of get into it a little bit. What's your view of the most important elements of putter design and maybe sort of a connected question, some things in putter design that are touted as important but not really so?
Well, for us, Tony, the biggest thing is to match the rotational value of the putter with the requirement of the stroke. We see the biggest fault or difficulty, I should say, not fault, difficulty. Yeah. For players is that their bodies want to produce a certain shape of stroke, yet their mind and their preference and whoever has influenced them tells them that they want to do something different. So we start that with the location of the shaft axis relative to the head. Now that's everybody will say, well, Bruce, that's toe hang. Well, not necessarily. It's the more specific, and we want to know how far that axis point, that intersection point with the head is from the toe specifically, because we want to be able to match the speed of the toe with the requirement of the arc so the face stays consistent to the arc. That's the biggest one for us.
Yeah. And I've been seeing a lot of that when I go back and look at old Sam Putt Lab reports and where it matches and where it doesn't. So
Right. You get a little shut. You see a guy gets a little shut every time he swings the putter. Well, we know that's a function of the player, but we also know that the putter can influence that, and that if the putter wants to swing on a certain plane, the heavier it is, the more it will influence you on where it swings, because that's where it feels best.
Yeah,
that's where you notice that it feels best. Well, that twist, it might be a twisting action for your body to reproduce that. So you're trying to reproduce that manipulation on every stroke. So you can never really be, a lot of the guys, the mental guys all tell me they want to be in the subconscious mode when they putt. They just want to let her fly. Well, if you've got a putter that doesn't fit from a rotational standpoint, you can never get into that mode, because you always have to be geared in to fix the manipulation. You can't just leave it shut or let it, or block, or whatever it is that's going on because the putter influenced you. So that's a huge one. The other ones are, we want to know offset, but we want to know offset not from an aiming standpoint, but we treat offset like you would draw or fade bias on a driver. We know that the the lesser amount of offset you have, the more the putter will swing a little open to whatever plane it's on, and the more you have, the more closed it is. Now that doesn't mean that you're automatically going to be closed or automatically going to be open, but it shifts the window. So if you're really closed, you can use a putter with 0 offset to be less closed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's not,
right.
It's not a 1-to-1, or it's not an absolute. The other thing that we're becoming more and more aware of now that once we were able to balance putters to strokes, we started to see the importance of weight. In our last conversation, you brought it up about counterweighting and what the benefits of that. And that's the only regret I had from our conversation, is that we just didn't get into that, because the ratio of swing weight to total weight and how you makes the ball, it helps you get on line easier, but it also helps you control speed. So it's important to consider both. And I'll talk about it maybe a little later, but you want to get the weight, you got to get it right. And then we want to look at loft and launch control. And the thing is with loft is that nothing, as we talk about designs, nothing that we've seen so far is better than just having the right loft on the putter. And so we want to be real aware that we want to try and get in a window of 1.5 to 2.5 degrees of launch, and then not really worry about anything else, because the ground and the ball itself will take care of the rest.
So you're saying not worry too much about launch or about rise angle and stuff like that too?
No, because you can get it to roll good at almost any launch angle, just depending on how you strike it with the loft. So I don't want a player to feel like I've got to play the ball forward and I got to hit up on it to roll it well, because that'll make me a better putter. First of all, the jury's still out on whether rolling it better makes you a better putter. It helps people sell putters, but that idea of roll. Now, having said that, I don't want you bouncing it.
Yeah,
obviously.
Right.
But even in the old days, if you just fit to a static fit, you were going to get a better roll. If you got the right length, the right lie, the right loft, that ball was going to roll better than if you were chopping at it and it, because the putter was too long or too short, or the toe was way up, or anything else. So I think for our entire conversation today, every little bit helps. And there's no right or wrong as much as there is what's the next step, or what's the next level, or what do I need as a player. As far as the ones that we don't worry about too much, I've already brought it up. One, the biggest thing right now is this ball roll technology. You can only control when it rolls, not how it rolls. So the idea, and the jury, like I said, the jury's still out on the best ratio of skid to roll. There were a lot of assumptions made early on, and now that we're starting to measure it a little bit, Flight Scope, TrackMan, they're able to measure when it skids and when it starts to roll. I'm not sure anybody's coming back and saying, oh yeah, this is definitely right. 5% skid to 95% roll is perfect, because that means you've slammed the ball into the ground a little bit at impact, and that we call it the squirt. What it does when you drive the ball into the turf, how does it react coming out of there? And a lot of times that's when we see this. We'll see face square on Putt Lab, and we'll see the ball go right. Well, you start looking at the other numbers and you go, oh look, he had a 5-degree shaft lean. He hit it with -2 degrees of loft, and he drove it right into the synthetic turf, and the synthetic turf kicked it left or right. So we're looking for a clean launch, basically, and we're not going to worry about that ball roll technology. And then the other one, and this will be controversial, but aim technology, more lines, and how they put the lines and all that stuff. We're not sure. We think aim is a function of the player and his visual discipline, and it's not a function of the putter. You don't aim better because you get a different picture. You aim better because of that you did something, and this happens to give you some confidence in where you're looking. But that's all it is, really, just a level of confidence. One of the things the one that woke us up to that was when the 2-ball came out, and we started. Everybody that came to do a Putt Lab report had a 2-ball, and we kept track, and we were running about 80-some% that would aim left with a 2-ball. Well, why would that be? Well, come to find out, or what we think we figured out, was that you line up the 2 balls with the 3rd ball, and it didn't matter what direction you were looking at. As long as those lined up, you were good. So you'd set that thing down a little close, get the 3 balls to line up, your ball with the 2 balls, get them to line up and say, oh, look, that's a perfect picture. I'm aiming great. Well, I'm really 3 degrees left of the target. So once we ask them to point the 2 balls on a line and ignore the ball, everybody started aiming better. So that was a function of the player. What was I looking at, and where am I pointing the putter? And I think in most cases, you find that the picture that you draw to try and aim is really just a supplement to what you're doing better. And so we don't worry about it too much. And we don't deal with it first. We actually deal with it last.
Yeah. Well,
that's not to say we don't use lines. Don't get me wrong. We use them, but we use them once we know, because you can be, one of the things that we found is you can be a great aimer. You can have a putter that you aim great, but you don't swing the putter in the same direction that you aim it. And the reason is because your perception of target is skewed to the aim. You've taught yourself what that picture looks like when you look down, but you haven't taught yourself what that picture looks like relative to the target out to your left or right.
Yeah.
And so you end up with this stroke that's kind of twisted and doesn't match up because of the picture. You're not focused on what you need to focus on because you just assumed that I can aim this great. Yeah. And so we want to avoid that if we can. So that just moves us. It doesn't make it aiming technology less. It's not less important. It's just later in the timeline when we consider it.
Yeah. Well, as you know, you got me playing around with, how I really see the line, and boy, that's it's a bad set of words, but it's a real eye opener for me, Yeah. I mean, I don't play a lot, but when I did it last time, everything just felt more comfortable now that I'm setting up a little bit different to see the line. It's a huge difference. So
I had an interesting, a couple of years ago, I had a teacher reach out to me and had read some of my stuff on the blog and was really fascinated with it. And he used the term perception of target. And I said, boy, that's a great way to put it. I'm gonna steal that from you. And he said, Bruce, you wrote it in the blog.
Oh, gee.
I thought I'd use that term. So I said, oh, that's nice. Thanks you could have just claimed it and I'd have gone along with it. So. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's important. It's you need to know, because you're not looking directly at it. There's this long debate, and it gets away from putters, but there's the debate about look at the hole, not look at the hole. It's how do you perceive where the target is, and what if you're just going to look at the ball, you have to have a sense of where you're going that's accurate.
Yeah, big stuff, boy.
Yeah.
Well, the second item to let's talk a little bit about is putter designs and how they've evolved. And you're gonna, at the end of this, you're gonna say something that I was surprised at. I hope we don't forget, and if you do, I'll remind you. But what have been the most important improvements from the standpoint of helping golfers putt their best, besides red putters, right?
Right.
That's interesting.
Well, the paint job, we've fallen in love with the paint jobs, which is okay. I think it's fun. It's. I'm not sure. I think we lose track, and especially for the average player. But I'll tell you, it happens at every level. We lose track of what we're trying to do. And if it looks good and it feels good, I'll go with it. And it's not, there's options. And I think that's the biggest thing in putter design that's been beneficial for me is the variety of fitting options. I can do grip and weight and face balance and everything I need to discuss with the player, rotational value, everything I need to discuss with the player and have an opportunity to get the putter exactly right. Where when I first started, it was either a heel shafted blade or a ping anser or somebody's heel shafted mallet. That's all we had. And so you'd fit statically and you'd get them where you wanted, but it still wasn't always working. And so in my old days, I'm way too old to be doing this still, but
yeah.
The idea that, I got a static fit, but it didn't work. Why didn't it work? And that was a big motivator for me. So, like, for example, if I need D7 swing weight, 525 grams at 36 inches for a moderate motion stroke, moderate MOI stroke. And when I say MOI, I mean resistance to twisting and motion, not necessarily resistance to twisting and impact.
Yeah.
Club fitters understand what I'm saying when I talk about that. I don't know that everybody else might understand it, but it's there's two definitions. One is, does the head twist at impact, and the MOI that creates that, but there's also an overall MOI, swing MOI, or whatever. You guys have better terms.
It's kind of like, it's equivalent, not really equivalent to swing weight, but it's more dynamic than swing weight.
Yeah, it's where's the weight and how is it distributed and how do I get it to move? And the thing is, we don't have another club in the bag to compare it to, so we have to create numbers. We have to create a situation that fits best for the motion. But if I can do that D7 525 36 inches, I can do the same thing at 32 inches without having to rig the system. Like for example, if I've got a guy that needs D5, but he needs it at 31 inches, and I've got a conventional OEM head. Let's say it's a big mallet, high MOI mallet with a COG back in the head. If I put lead powder down that shaft, I move the COG up where it doesn't belong in the mallet, and it kind of messes with the feel of the mallet and the playability of the mallet. And then you have to have the argument, well, is the swing weight more important than the positive things I got from having this high MOI mallet? Well, now anymore, I don't have to do that. I can get one at 370. I can get it at 340. I can, Ping's, like Ping, for example, they got dual weights in a lot of their heads. Scotty Cameron has adjustable weights in his head, not easy to do. But, there's a lot of variations, a lot of variety, a lot of opportunities that we just never had before. Now, I'm going to have a lot of people say, well, what about, forgiveness and all that? Well, we'll talk about that. But that's not, to me, and to what we do, that's not the important thing.
Well, and then so many people will get, of course, they might not have been fit right. They'll get something cut down, and then they don't have the opportunity to get that weight right. And
Absolutely. And we see that a lot. I can give you an example. I've got a player I'm working with right now. It's a Division I player. And if I don't mention names, Tony, I think I mentioned before.
Well, I think it's appropriate, yeah.
And I have non-disclosure agreements with a lot of teachers, and it's not fair to the teachers for me to go, well, this guy's doing this, and I got caught the other day, and regretted it a little bit because I made a comment about a pretty well-known player that I knew something about the stroke, and I really offended his teacher, and that wasn't my intent. So if I don't mention names, but this is a young lady, and she plays a putter that's 31 3/4 inches long, and she put a grip on it because she liked the shape of the grip that weighed 148 grams.
Whoa.
So this putter weighs 625 total grams, and it swing weights at B1. And this poor thing, she can't get it started, for one. Number two, her distance control really struggles. Now, this is a potential All-American player, and she's overcome this putter, this weight. She's learned how to use it. So now what we're trying to do is we're trying to decide whether we can help her with a putter fit, or are we really just trying to enhance what she's got because she's so used to it? Well, if that putter had been properly fit, we could have used, the same company has a grip that weighs 70 grams. We could have put the 70-gram grip on a head that weighs an appropriate amount, and we could have got a conventional fit to the putter, a better feel for the putt. One of the things we found, I'll just add this, when you're talking about putter design, and nobody wants to talk about swing weight for a putter, but we've had a lot of success matching the swing weight of the putter to the swing weight of their sand wedge. And that we think there's a transitional thing going on there, and then there's not, you don't have this, and so your body develops a feel for a golf swing.
Yeah.
And it's not stuck with, oh, we're playing a whole new game. We go from hitting a wedge, a chip shot from the side of the green, and then all of a sudden I put a sledgehammer in your hand to finish the job. Well, maybe that's not the best way for the player. Maybe that's harder on the player. So that's what we've had. But I think the biggest thing, and maybe what you were alluding to, is the quality of the golf ball. That's made more people putt better than anything that we've done with a putter, because they roll truer. And everybody says, well, the greens are better and all this. Well, they still have footprints, and they footprint up worse or as bad at a high speed as they do when they're long, but the ball rolls truer. So you can you've got a better idea of how the putter influences the ball, because at least you can trust the golf ball. Back in my day, Mr. Palmer played a ball for a while that you couldn't find a round one in 30 balls. Jack, I'm sure Mr. Nicholas, I saw him, Jack won half his majors with an oblong golf ball. So that's something to think about, is that, that while I'm doing all this, that from a design standpoint, the golf ball means something too. Like if you constantly change golf ball, you constantly change the way it feels off the putter. You constantly change how you're trying to adjust for speed.
Yeah, that's a brilliant thought there. And I've seen the old balls, and they're just wow. And I've seen videos of, when you don't put them in line. I mean, not a lot of people have seen those kind of things, but
right.
How do you start trusting, right?
Yeah, right. And when you're trying to decide what you're doing wrong, you gotta have some places that you can think about. Well, at least I know this is happening, But
yeah.
Anyway.
Well, what are some of the things that golfers most often do then to sabotage your games related to putter design?
All right. So I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say, please don't. Those of you that have gone this route, please don't be offended. But the biggest thing that we get at all levels is a player will trade feel for forgiveness. They will automatically assume that they're not putting well, that if they get a high MOI big mallet, that's going to fix it. Well, what that does is you don't feel the miss hit anymore. So I have a great example of a player, a top 10 player in the world, that we were talking about. We were talking to the coach about understanding what his setup and what was required of the stroke from his setup so that he would manipulate the putter. And he started to understand it, and so he went back to a putter that he used and had some success with as a young player and said, well, I can't use this one anymore because I hit it on the toe all the time. And I came back and said, no, you hit it on the toe all the time still, you just can't feel it anymore. And if you're gonna be a good putter, it's gonna start with a consistent point on the putter that you impacted. You're not, if you hit it all over the face, no matter what we do to the design of the putter, you're not going to be a great putter. You're just not. You're not going to hit it. You're not going to have an 1.5 inch dispersion on a putter face and have any control over what that golf ball is doing to the point of making any putts. You might 3-putt less, but that's just trying to eliminate average. I get after a lot of young guys that teach, don't coach to average. Give them a chance. Let's tell them what they need, and then they can decide. Yeah. But that's the biggest one, is that it's easy to sell. It's easy to sell easy for the manufacturers. So I put this putter out and it says, this is 9 different ways that this makes your game easier. You're going to have better distance control. Well, we can get into that. But it's feel. What changes is a toe hit doesn't feel like a toe hit anymore. So my brain registers that as a solid hit, and I misread it. No, you hit it on the toe, and that's why you missed it. So we really are hoping that we can get back to using MOI as a positive, but not to the detriment of your stroke. And I've had a number of players that I've had good runs with a lot of players where we showed them that, and as soon as a little bit of loss of feel or a little loss of confidence, they just go zooming right back to the mallets. Plus, at the tour level, the manufacturers want you to use that mallet because they want to sell putters. And if a player sees you using this high MOI mallet, they assume that you're doing well with it, and then they'll go buy one for themselves.
Yeah.
If you look at the stats, the guys that are really tough don't use the big mallets. You're never going to see Jordan Spieth with a high MOI mallet. If you do, he's not going to be the player we remembered him.
Yeah.
You don't see Tiger Woods. You don't see Stan Utley. You don't see Ben Crenshaw. You don't see it because they want to know when they missed one. If I hit this thing on the toe, well, I'm going to fix that right away. But if you've got one that doesn't give you that feedback, you might go 4 or 5 months before you figure out you're hitting them on the toe or the heel or wherever you're hitting it. So that's obviously I'm pretty passionate about that, but I understand at a certain level. We've used it a lot. We've used high MOI to calm down a stroke. We got a guy that's got the face going all over the place. We give him a high MOI, show him how to use it just to get him so he can feel what stable feels like. And then we'll wean him back into another putter if he needs to. We'll say, okay, we'll use this for a while. Let this putter help you learn how to not twist your hands all over the lot, and then go back to it. But the idea of using it as a that I'm going to putt better. That's a little overrated, at least.
Yeah, it's almost like, as you were talking about it, that it's sort of analogous to, at least most people were thinking that that the tour guys use blades because they want to feel when they miss it, that they want all that forgiveness in the clubs, so they know what the heck is really going on. They're not looking for forgiveness. They're looking for
right. You'd hope so, but boy, a bunch of them, it's first of all, you can't pick on those guys. It's incredibly hard to be on tour.
Incredible, yeah.
At whatever talent level they are, and they're not Tiger confident. Not all of them, right?
Yeah.
They're all, because it's real easy. You and I could go out tour event and we'd be standing on the green, and they've never met us, right? And we're just standing there and we're wearing some hat that says we own a putter company. And I promise you, they'll come up and say, "What am I doing wrong?" "Gosh, I've never met you. I have no idea."
Yeah.
Well, it's that level of I must be doing something wrong. They're not doing anything wrong. They're just fighting the battle, And so that's what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to change the conversation a little bit, and say, here's what you can. Here's what would help you. We built practice putters. If you've ever seen my website or my Facebook page or my blog, you've seen the nine practice putters. Those are built to punish you. You mishit it.
I like that. Yeah, right.
You mishit it, you know it. They don't have any loft. They don't have any. They've got I don't know if they've got a sweet spot. I find it about once every 3 months when I hit one, but that's what it's there for. And you have instant feedback. I hit that on the toe and I hit it low on the face. I hit that on the heel and I hit it high on the face. Where are we trying to hit it? And we use that to help people groove a stroke, because we'll match the face balance, we'll match the characteristics of the practice putter to what they'll use when they're gaming it. And so we'll develop a feel. Now make that stroke with this putter. Oh, this is so much easier. So we like that. It's a hard sell, but we use it a lot and we like it. And I think that's helpful. I think that once you buy into the forgiveness aspect of it, however it's presented to you, you lose the opportunity to get a lot better.
Yeah. Well, now you talked about it just a little bit in our last interview too, but how should golfers decide on the type of putter design that is really going to be the best fit for their stroke? And I think it's worth talking about it again, because not everybody listens to it.
Well, I think the biggest thing is that you determine where you stand relative to the ball, and you don't let somebody else tell you. You let your vision, and you've seen in the outline that we use. I need to know the distance that you're going to be from the ball so that you have the best perception of the target. I need to know where you're going to place the ball relative into your stance where you can aim it the best. And so, is it ball forward? Do I aim it best when I'm ball forward? Do I aim it best when I'm ball back? Is it in the middle? We've got a grid that we use to get relatively close. I need to know that before we ever discuss what putter you're going to use, because that model then is going to dictate what's the rotational value of the putter? How much offset do I need? And then what size grip am I going to use to help me? Like, for example, if you're a Tiger Woods, who was a trail arm dominant player, you can't put a great big grip on the putter for that player, because it acts like a gear. So when he goes to release his right hand into it, where he closes his right hand into it to square the face, what was a little movement with a little grip becomes a huge movement with a big grip. So you have to know these things about yourself. You have to know how you move and all these things before you start to make the decision about the putter. Then once you do, then it becomes fairly easy. We go to shaft axis. What's the proper shaft axis for how far you're going to stand from the ball? And are you upright or are you over it? Then we're going to know. Then we know we can start to decide, okay, how you move and how you align that puts a tilt in the stroke. It comes a little inside down the line, or it goes straight back and goes a little left, or whatever it does. Then we can help you with offset to make sure that the face is square when the arc meshes with the straight line, the target line. Then once we know that, now we've got a feel for the line. We've got you in the right position. We've got the putter to match so it doesn't influence your stroke, and we can square this thing up and I can hit it on line. But that's just a small part of it. The next thing I need to know is what kind of weight distribution, what swing weight's the easiest way to describe it, right?
Yeah.
What kind of swing weight and overall weight do you need so that this putter will swing consistently and you can control the distance based on the feel? If it's too light, I move too fast. If it's too heavy, I move too slow. What is it? And we've got some ways of going through it, but it's not easy. And it depends a lot on the feedback of the player and a lot on just doing some grunt work to figure out what that measurement is. It helps to have timing numbers. It helps to know if you're fast or slow and how you are relative maybe to another player, because we can use those averages then to make you above average. So, but those are the biggest things. And then once you get that weight, then it can look like whatever it wants to look like. You can paint it whatever color you want. You can put whatever lines you want. You can do whatever you want. The cosmetics of it don't matter so much once you get that down. We call it the bones of the putter. What are the bones of the putter? What's the specifics that we've got to do? And instead of trying to buy a putter that looks good to me, I'm going to buy a putter that feels good to me, and I'm going to get used to the looks because I like picking the ball out of the hole.
Yeah, that's a lot more fun. Now, you said the other thing you said in the sort of preliminary notes is talking about never fit to correct, always fit to enhance. And after you talk about this, I'm going to mention one instance, and you'll tell me why maybe I was or wasn't doing that. But go ahead, talk about that for a second.
I can give you a perfect example. There was on one of the forums a guy posted his putt lab. He'd been fit for a putter, and he had a moderate to a little bigger than moderate arc, and he had some rotation in his stroke. And he went to this place to get fit, and they fit him in a high MOI, low rotation mallet. Now, they did it to reduce the rotation numbers because he didn't match the numbers on Putt Lab. Well, it's not a dog show. You don't get to putt good if you match numbers. You putt good because you got something that works for you. So the idea of reducing rotation or increasing rotation to match a model, that's not the best way to do it. The best way to do it is to do the homework that understands this is what this stroke requires by the mechanical model, by how he sets up. For example, an Adam Scott will have way more rotation in his stroke than a Michelle Wee. If those two pictures, if people can do those two pictures.
Oh yeah, well you can,
because the way they set up. I'm either going around or I'm going straight. Where the shoulders rotate, it's either vertical or flat. And the flatter it is, the more you rotate. So to put a high MOI, low rotation putter in a high rotation setup causes problems. But they mask it by saying, well, this is what you need. And then the guy goes and he spends the money on the putter and he says, well, I'm not putting any better. In fact, it's a little bit worse. So that's what I'm talking about fit to correct, that you should know what you want out of the stroke. Now, having said all that, adding weight or subtracting weight or trying to fine tune, I view that as different. I'm going to make some changes in your putter to help you do what you do, not make some changes in your putter to help you do what I want you to do. Is that a good way to put? I struggle with how to phrase that.
Yeah,
because there's so many ways to look at it, and none of them are wrong. It's just some are more effective than others, and I think that when you start to fit to a model, early on when I started writing my blog, I said there's basically three ways you can learn how to putt. One is you can copy somebody else and try and build their stroke. Well, I tried that. I wanted to be Ben Crenshaw. I'm 6'3", 275 pounds. Ben's 5'8" and $140. I had no chance, right?
Yeah.
The other way is you build yourself to a model. So the model during most of my career has been eyes over the ball, straight back, straight through. That was the popular model. Well, I can't do that either. I try. If I get my eyes directly over the ball and I bend my body in a way to do that, I start to get lightheaded. So I can't do that. So that's not going to work for me either. So now I got to make the decision, am I doomed to be a bad putter? Or can I find a way to take who I am and what I am and make it work? Well, the obvious answer is yes, you can, because it's nothing that we make about making a putt is predicated about how you stand to it or how you move. It's all predicated on the fact that you can move the putter at the appropriate speed and have the face pointed at the appropriate direction at the time that you need it to happen. That's all it takes. There's nothing else. It's like shoulder alignment and body alignment and all those things. That's full swing stuff. I'm trying to minimize the spin on the ball. When I'm rolling the ball on the ground, I don't have to worry about my alignment. I just have to worry about where the face is when I hit it.
Yeah.
So we've gotten away from we've tried to take this massive information that we created full swing, and we tried to apply it to putters. Well, the massive information that we needed to fit putters was in different categories. It wasn't in the player's posture. In fact, we've had a lot of fun here lately. I got a quote from one of my clients in Australia that says, "So Bruce, what you're telling me is that good posture for full swing is probably bad posture for putting," and there's no doubt. There's no doubt.
There's no comparison, is there?
Right.
Yeah.
You go in there with the straight back, shoulders back, head up, and you try and make the putter go straight. Good luck.
Yeah. Well, I had one guy once, a good friend. He's probably about 85 right now, 80-ish. But I put 100-gram counterweight in his putter. But I didn't do a lot of analysis and things with him. But I just played around with him a little bit on the green and tried different counterweights, and it helped him just get a little smoother on 2-foot, 3-foot putts where he just couldn't swing the putter.
One of the things that we're finding, Tony, is that the counterweight, there's a benefit, but the benefit is in the situation that you just described, that I've got a putter here that I'm pretty happy with, but I need some help on the weight side. And basically, if you being a fitter, this is going to make perfect sense to you. Really what you found was that the head weight, the swing weight was too heavy for the player to start.
He couldn't move the putter.
Right. So by counterweighting it, I lightened up the swing weight. I got to the point where I could deliver the blow square. And then what happened was it also was probably too light overall. So I've added this 100 grams to this thing, and now I'm in the 600 gram range, but everything balances out based on what I required. And so I like counterweights, but I like to do it after the fact. And I use that counterweight and that's what I was saying about being able to describe it better. I like to use that as my go-to. So in my case where the young lady that was B2 at 625, the truth of the matter is it needed to be 725 or, not 725, but 675 and, in the high C range and even heavier.
Yeah.
And so I moved that head weight down. I moved that balance point. And I mentioned this before that some players swing the balance point, some players swing the head. And sometimes that's forced by the putter that they've been using. So they learn how to swing the balance point or they learn how to swing the head. And in your player's case, maybe we can make an argument that says that he was more comfortable swinging the balance point and you move that balance point to exactly where he needed it. And made him more focused on his hands and his body as opposed to where the head was.
Yeah, I think that's highly likely. Yeah.
And so that's a good thing, right?
That's right.
And I said that's a good thing, isn't it? Yes. I mean, that you got it right. He's happy, and now you know something about his stroke, so that when he says, at 85, maybe he won't, but maybe he will, and he'll come back to you and you say, "Okay, Tony, what's the next level?"
Yeah.
Now Now you've got a basis to work from, and you're not guessing. And you say, okay, we know this is all good. Now, what do we need to change, or what can we do to help you with where you're at? Well, maybe I'm not as good short putts or something like that. So that might be a technique kind of thing that you can discuss with him.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that we feel, too, very strongly about in everything that we do at the Ford and with the golf club or the Golf School of Indiana is that we think teaching and fitting have to be one and the same. And if it takes two guys standing there to do it, then it takes two guys standing there to do it. But you can't have a preference as an instructor. I can't have a teaching preference if fits the issue. I can't have a fitting preference if I need to help him in teaching. I got to kind of try and be both ways if I can. And that's how we're going to help the player the most.
Yeah. And there's no question in putting that's got to be that way.
Oh, it has to. It has to, because, like, for example, if I build a putter, counterweighted putters don't work well for guys that generate their strokes with their hands and their arms, and especially their hands. If you start with your hands, it doesn't work nearly as well as if you're more big muscle. So a combination of shoulders and arms.
Yeah.
So you've got to be aware of that. You got to say, well, if you're going to be what we're doing when we put you in this counterweight putters, we're trying to move the source up into the bigger muscles. And so the player's aware of that. Oh, well, that makes it a lot easier. Instead of instead of a guy like, well, I don't work with Duffner, so I'll use Jason as an example. Jason went to a really big grip when he was struggling with his hands in his rotation. Well, that exaggerated it and made it worse. And what we could have said was, Jason, when you went to this ultra big grip, you're taking it out of your hands. That's the whole key. It's not to help you use your hands. It's to help you not use your hands. And so we want you to swing more from the core. We want your shoulders to rotate and your hands to be passive. And we think that would work better for you. That extra sentence on top of putting that great big grip on there would have helped him a lot.
Yeah.
And made him a lot of money. But it didn't, so he's still messing around. But the last time I saw him play, he doesn't use his hands anywhere near as much as he used to. So he's getting it figured out.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to skip around a little bit. I mean, we had another question kind of in the middle there, but yeah. The one that was kind of interesting that I asked and you talked about, Tiger, Jordan, Zach Johnson are examples that are, that kind of tinkered around with changing putters and went back. From what you see watching them, should they have tinkered, or maybe it's good to have learned that maybe they shouldn't have, right?
Well, I guess that's my attitude. If you work for Arnold Palmer for 20 years, you accept change.
Yeah,
you see a different one every day, so you accept that. But one of the things that we knew, you can tell, and the examples that we're talking about there, Tiger, Jordan, and Zach. Tiger couldn't handle the loft of the method putter. I got some inside information on that.
Yeah.
And so he went from what we call a clean launch, where the ball launches from the putter a little bit in the air, maybe 2-3 degrees launch, but moving forward, not up. So I launch it at 3 degrees. The ball starts to roll as soon as it makes contact with the ground, and it starts that forward roll. And Tiger had basically what we would call a neutral orientation coming off the ball. It didn't turn over necessarily, but it wasn't going backwards either. And then, so when he changed loft on the putter, even though everything else was the same, but the grooves and the loft made it very difficult for him to judge anything. And as soon as he started to play with his stroke to adjust for the loft and impact, then he went backwards on speed control. And just all of a sudden I'm lost. I don't know what I used to do.
Yeah.
With Jordan, there was no way. Jordan would basically have to start over to go to a face balance mallet from his 09, his Cameron, because that thing rotates, and there's no doubt in my mind, and I've never met him, but there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that he judges where that face is based on where he feels the toe is. I can just tell by watching his hands and watching how he moves and listening to what he says about his stroke. So when I take away the feel of that toe, that 45 degrees toe hang in that Cameron 09, when I take that away from him, he's lost. And what he said was in the interviews, he says, I was looking for the perfect stroke, and it didn't take me very long to find out that I didn't have one. Well, yeah, he does. He's got a perfect stroke. It just doesn't look like what everybody thinks it should look like. I
remember seeing some things online about that too, that that was his eureka, wasn't it? That, hey,
right,
get over it a little bit, right?
Yeah. If I'm standing there with him and Cameron, I'm going, guys, you mess with this stroke, then you guys will be famous for messing with the one that worked.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's a little bit hooked. When he putts best, the putter comes a little bit inside, and then he just delivers the blow and holds it square with his left hand going through, inside down the line, but just slightly. And when he gets in troubles, when he tries to take it straight back, he gets shut, then he gets blocky, that's when he loses it. And you can tell on TV when it goes back inside, I'm a great one for just yelling, well, that's going in, because I can just see it coming, and it's fun. It's fun because he's done it a couple times. We had him when it was on TV in the shop, and the guys yelled at me and said, hey, Bruce, Jordan's got a long one. And it was one of the bombs that he made to win the British. And
right.
I walked out of my office and he started to take it back. And I says, well, that's got a chance. And sure enough, it goes in. And everybody in the room's looking at me. So I had to explain to him why I thought it did. And I said, I had zero chance, but it wasn't going to hurt to throw that out there, But you can tell, and you can see it. You can see it with Tiger stroke. You can see it. Zach's an interesting one because of the Seymour visual technology. One of the things that we found with Seymour is that the guys that play the ball a little bit forward in their stance, but are right eye dominant, will have a tendency to tilt that putter back toward their right eye. And
that's exactly what he does too, right?
Yeah, and not everybody does. Some people, we know that Payne Stewart learned how to look at it with his left eye. I know that for a fact. I knew Payne at Bay Hill. I know that's true, that he actually taught himself to, when he aimed the putter, he did it with his left eye, because he realized right away that it didn't work unless that left eye was lined up with it. So there's a step involved with that Seymour. So when Zach tried something that didn't have that technology or was a little bit different, man, everything changed for him. And Damon Green is a friend of mine from Bay Hill, is his caddy, and I sent him a note and I said, I'm surprised it took him that long to change back, because it had to look like a disaster when he looked down at it. He's so trained, and he's built his stroke based on leaning the shaft back. There's nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
And
if he gets it in a hole.
Yeah, and if he misses it, it's not because he was leaning the shaft back. It was because he did something else wrong. And we, as instructors, and I'll put myself in that group, we have this tendency to criticize what we see instead of what really is wrong. Like, for example, if you had a player, I had a player in my early days. If I had a player with an open stance and his feet were open to the target when he was putting, first thing I would mention to him is to move his feet back to parallel. Well, why? I mean, really, why? What difference does it make? If this puts his eyes in a position where he sees it best and his stance a little bit open, then you can start to analyze what's really going wrong and isn't not what I see. But we're so quick to say, well, your hands are supposed to be here, and your feet are supposed to be here, and your shoulders are supposed to be here, and your spine's supposed to be tilted this way, and the ball's supposed to be in a certain position, and you're supposed to hit up on it. And all those rules that we've created that only apply to certain people.
Yeah, all those models, right?
That's right. If we had robots, we'd know exactly how to teach them, but we don't. So we gotta work with the player. And I think if I'm, with my system, the one thing that I'm most proud of and why I don't change when people tell me I'm wrong, I say, no, I'm sticking with what I got, is because I can teach anybody. You can come to me and you can do whatever you feel like you need to do, and we can build a model that'll work for you, and we can get that putter to fit. Now we may have to go to California or Australia to get something custom made, but we'll get it. We know what to do. We got the design expertise to match the stroke expertise, and that's what I'm most happy about.
Well, you said something that was really key, too. You said build a model. You didn't say make you fit to a model. Right?
And yeah, exactly. I mean, I think I mentioned it in our first one, but the one I took a terrible beating when I come out and said, I think eyes over the ball is probably the worst instruction in the history of golf. Because it was 1 out of 50 when we started doing this that saw the line, was comfortable with a straight line to the target when they put their eyes directly over the ball. But I think one thing's important for people to realize. If you run a string all the way to the target, if you use that as a guideline, your eyes will adapt that the fact that the string goes to the target. It'll see it.
Yeah.
But I've never played a round of golf where I had a line that I had to use a laser or a string to run it all the way to the target so I'd know where I was going. So all I can deal with are partials. What's in front of me, what's on the putter, what's on the ball. Those have to look correct. And if I get out of position, like for example, I use a line on the ball because I cannot find the target. I've taught myself how to hit it a specific distance, because if I look at the target, it's going to point me in a different direction, and I don't have the willpower to overcome it. So I've literally taught myself I'm going to hit it where the line's pointed. Tiger taught us that. And then I'm going to learn how to roll it 30 feet or 20 feet or whatever I need to do so that I can control it that way. So this is a 30-foot stroke on this line, and I'm going to ask that guy to pick it out of the hole because my back hurts. But it's worked. It's worked for me. Now, I won't suggest that to anybody else because it's a nightmare to not look at the hole. It's just a nightmare, but I taught myself how to do it. So we find picking spots, we find these things and get the putter then to match that. So that's off the subject a little bit, but it goes back to once I get confused about something, the first thing I'll do is I'll change the putter. And do I know why I'm changing? Why are you changing? Well, I just need a new look. Boy, that's a scary one for me. New looks are not the way to go because you know.
Well, there's also been people though that I've seen. I mean, And, I don't have as much knowledge 2 or 3 years ago as I do now, but,
Right.
they've putted with this thing forever and they're not really very good, but I just kept putting with it.
Right. Right.
They don't know how to. They don't know how to make a change.
I told one of my clients, she's a head coach of a Division I women's golf team. I told her the other day that I spend most of my time asking people what they did when they first started. What was the putter they used as a developing player? Because that's a lot of information for me. And I asked her, I said, whatever you do, coach, don't tell anybody, because I really enjoy what I do for a living. And if they find out it's that easy, I won't get to do it.
That's pretty good.
But it's true. Do you remember the first putter you ever had? I think I asked you before.
Gosh, I don't think I do though. But I mean, as you know, I've been putting with an Adele for a while until I played around with some other things. And, I spent months realizing that didn't work.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just that you didn't adapt to it. You could go back now that you've seen them.
I think I putted with a blade that probably had a little bit offset. Sure.
And so you probably built a stroke that you didn't stand right on top of the ball. You just kind of stood up and stood off of it, and you kind of swung the putter on like you swung a golf club, and it had some arc and it had some rotation, and that's how you learned how to
and a little
play.
bit inside to outside.
Yeah, right? And then all of a sudden somebody told you that was wrong, or you read that was wrong, or you read that this was better or whatever, and so then you tried to change, and all that work you put in as a kid gets thrown in the trash because you're trying something new.
Yeah.
And so you lose the feel that you had, and then you spend a lot of time trying to mask the new feel because it doesn't work, and that's the rut that we all get in, and and just doesn't help you, and so one of my teams is a cumulative 5 strokes gained per round right now.
Yeah. Wow.
You put that in a team, and all we did was say, you're either going to swing the putter that you've got like this, or we're going to get you a putter that works better for you. And the worst that we've got is that one girl's trying to change her stroke because she won't give up the putter, and she's even. She's the same as she was last year. But the rest of the team is 1 or 2 shots better than they were last year, and we're going to start seeing it. And it wasn't a miracle. I didn't walk in there with some sort of magic powder. I just said, hey, let's just make sense.
Yeah.
Let's do this, and let's let you be you, and what's the best version of you.
Yeah.
And that's what needs to happen at whatever level. Yeah, for one thing, at the everyday player level, you have more fun. And at the competitive level, you have less anxiety. So those are all good things.
Yeah. Well, Bruce, another great interview.
I enjoyed it.
Any final words you want to, any things we missed, or, that you wanted to say? I think you got a lot of it in there, but
I was going hard.
That's
we gotta
great,
get that.
though.
Yeah. One of the things that we talked about a little bit about, if there's coaches or fitters out there that are listening, I just have one bit of advice. I'm never going to argue with you about your technique. I'm never going to be the guy that says, well, that's wrong, you ought to do it this way. Because I build a system that allows you to fit into the system. I've got a lot of guys, of the 9 profiles and the 9 instruction books that would come from the profiles, I have a bunch of guys that just teach specific ones. They don't use all 9. And I'm glad for it. Good. If that's what you're comfortable teaching and that's what you like, then I'm glad I can help. But what I always say, and I always want the point I'm going to make, is try and remember that you're trying to make a circular motion match a straight line. And if you don't remember that, you can cause a lot of problems with a player because you're trying to match straight to straight, which it doesn't happen. That the idea that the circular motion, this arc, whatever's created, big or little, it's only going to match the target line over a specific period of time and a specific distance. And you want to work on that. Don't worry about, I've got players that follow through 8-10 inches left of the target line at the end of their follow through. And everybody, to a person, when they see it, they go, oh, he's cutting it. Nope, he's 0 and 0. He just happens to exit his arc to the left. And so you want to deal with the stuff that helps you be a better putter, and not the stuff that you can talk to. I can spend all day talking about path direction, but in the end, it's only about, depending on who you're talking to, something around 10% of where the ball's going to go.
Yeah, that's right.
So what's the point? So if they can remember that and not be afraid of that, not be afraid of an arc, you can make it upright, you can make it look straight, you can make it flat. And one of the best putters in the world was Alan Doyle, and he had the biggest arc ever, and it worked for him. So
you used to love watching him.
That's amazing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Tad Moore is a friend, and Tad's the one that told me, he said, Bruce, he's the best putter you ever saw. Absolutely the best. And I got to see him at Sunny Anna, and saw him a couple times, and there was no doubt the man could just flat putt. But you would never teach that, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But I could fit to it. I can get him the putter that he wanted. So, it's allow the people to be the people and try and help them rather than dictate to them. I think that's the advice I would give.
I think it's great advice. Well, thanks again for this.
Thank you.
It's terrific. It's always great. I learn as much as I know other people listening to it learn. So it's a fabulous opportunity for me. And
like for you and I, Tony, I think what's going to be fun for me is I'm anxious to see where you end up.
Yeah.
So what did you decide was important, and what did you decide that I could live without, and where will you end up as an instructor and a fitter?
Yeah.
Just with the information.
I've already learned some things that are way different than I was doing before. That
Sure.
Way different, and I know they're working. So
good. Well, that's great. Well, thanks a lot.
You bet. We'll hang in for a minute, and I'm going to turn the button off, and there we go.
www.gameimprovementgolf.com.
Bruce, thanks again for that great interview and your enthusiasm for how to help golfers to putt their best. To learn more about Bruce Rearick and Burnt Edges Consulting, click the link in the show notes. And if you want to take a really deep learning dive into Bruce's knowledge about putter fitting, take some time to read many of his terrific blog posts. Well, that's it for today. In 2 weeks, I'm looking forward to sharing my conversation with Dr. Samuel Vine, Senior Lecturer in Psychology and Motor Science at the University of Exeter. Dr. Vine does research in the quiet eye process for putting improvement and in the relationship between anxiety and performance, and a number of other interesting areas. You're going to enjoy this one. See you in 2 weeks.
Game Improvement Golf, your source of information and inspiration to become an exceptional golfer now. www.gameimprovementgolf.com.